that's something that's going to be in the fast track. It's probably not going to be, it's probably going to be a whole host of things. You had a good stock price, you had good book value. Well, what are you worried about? You had higher than everybody else.
I know, but I still,
You
when
know.
you look on your balance scorecard, I scored really shitty in that category.
Well, I can't show everybody, but then look to see why. Everything you need is either in the fast tracks or in the balanced scorecard.
It's very confusing.
So, I mean, it will tell you over each of the balance, well, I'll save that for the scoring. But it will tell you each of those categories what you needed to do to get higher. All right.
I have a question. When you go on the finance, what I've observed is you have an investment and your cash position at the end of the year is still positive. Like December 31st, 2014 is still
Okay.
positive.
Correct.
If you submit that,
And it's not going to be that way, is it?
Big
It's
Al
about
comes in.
20% low. This is a pro forma.
No, I know, but what happens is Big Al would come in, even though it looks like he would have a
Yeah.
position.
I'm in black. Black is good.
Yeah, I've been 100% black.
I don't know if I came to the right conclusion, that's why I'm.
And he
Well,
still comes
you
and
know.
gets me. And I'm like, I don't
Okay.
think you'll
Can I finish asking?
All right. Well, let me yes. Well, go ahead.
So, I look at the cash position, it seemed like it was gonna be positive, Big Al comes back. The conclusion we came into was that you have a long-term debt to pay, a maturity which you can only see in the balance sheet.
Yes.
You have due this year, which you don't have there, but your current debt sometimes is due this year, and it shows there, plus you have your accounts payable. Should you add all of those?
No, it's already taken out. Okay. The problem is, and I see where your struggle is.
Okay.
The problem is that if you've got total investments, and so you already know whatever you invest in that production page, it will carry over to the finance, and you should automatically cover those investments, especially in those first, few crucial rounds.
When you say cover, you mean with financing?
But with the debt and equity,
Right, okay.
yes, correct. You want to cover that. In the first couple rounds, you may also want to cover your R&D expenses with debt and equity, especially if you're a little bit more risk averse and you want a nice cushion, cover your R&D expenses. The problem comes in if you finance correctly. Big Al's not going to come visit for that. But if you have over forecasted, that has nothing to do with the finance page. You could have, as we saw with Greg, $20 million sitting right there saying, Big Al's not going to come visit me, but since he so absurdly over forecasted, then Big Al came and took all of his money and gave him a $20 million loan on top of that. All right? He could have $20 million sitting there and then go down to zero and have no cash, and Big Al would give him like $1 loan. But he'd see Big Al because of the fact that, he spent $20 million in inventory. He had too much.
So what are the calculations that you do, looking at that, your balance sheet, your cash flow, to figure out if you're in a good position?
It has nothing to do with that because you have to make sure your forecasting is under control. Did you have decent forecasting in the practice rounds?
Until around 5.
Okay, so go back,
That's where it got me too.
figure out what happened. It's in the fast tracks. Analyze it, post-mortem it. Figure out why you had those issues. We know why Greg did. He can go and correct those now. If you didn't see Big Al, or you saw Big Al for a small amount in the practice rounds, go back and figure out why. Was it a forecasting issue? What did your competitors do that round that really kind of threw you for a loop? If you're financing correctly and you're forecasting correctly, this cash position could be $1 million and you'd be fine. Okay? Cash position could be $20 million, and if you haven't forecasted correctly, Big Al can still come to visit. So that doesn't have anything to do with the cash. You have to assume you're forecasting correctly. And if you don't, go back and correct. Figure out why. Does that help?
So the R&D expenses did not show up in the
No.
What
You
for
have to
stocking out?
just
Or-
the investments
having too
that
much
you made from
inventory?
production. you actually have to go and physically take more money out to cover the R&D.
It does?
Because you're losing
Sorry,
money.
Lola had her hand up.
So,
I don't
yeah, it
know.
costs, I guess, cost a dollar or something.
And when I kind of progressively run this decision, if I am negative, and if I'm in
Costs
the red,
more.
Then
that
yes.
number, I go back to adjust some things, maybe, borrow.
You probably haven't taken out enough money. Yeah, if you're in the red on this number, then absolutely you need to refinance.
Right, but the rule of thumb then is really important, because clearly it's not what, well, it's a portion of what's necessary, right? So looking at your AR and the fact that your AR has already been taken out, your amount due has already been taken out.
Correct.
What is the general, I guess, ratio or tolerance that by the time you hit cement and you're here, that should be greater than this, or?
Well, you can go back to your performance, and again, it's all based on performance, because you're assuming that you have forecasted correctly. You can know if you finance correctly, and you can take out a little cushion if it makes you feel better. The best thing is, again, look at that pro forma income statement and see where you are in the red. Now, that's not to say, hey, I've got Ace here and he's in the red, but I can't do anything to sell because it's in his first year and it's not coming out to the end of the year. Well, maybe I take out a little bit more financing to cover that $1 million loss. You may not be able to sell more, because if you go in and say, oh, well, I just need to increase my sales for Abel to make him be in the black, and then I'll be okay, well, then you've over forecasted and here comes Big Al. But what you can do is, if you feel comfortable with it, take out some extra money, some debt or equity, and have a cushion, if that makes you feel better.
And you said it's,
Well, there is a max amount you can borrow, yes, but current debt is a little bit higher in borrowing amount than long-term.
So when we get to that page, real quick, as long as we have cash, based on our total investment from the previous page, we don't really necessarily have to go borrow money to pay for it. We can use the cash that we have.
No, stop. What did I just say? You're fired. No, you do. And I mean, that's a great question, because that's a great pitfall to avoid,
I did that.
Aaron. In those early rounds, what you would like to see is the total investment covered by debt and equity. Probably plus a little R&D to, make you feel good. When you get to later rounds and that cash grows and you feel more comfortable, you can cut down the amount of debt and equity invested. You don't want to get rid of it completely, because you're borrowing other people's money. It's basically free.
Yeah, it's free.
So there
If
you
you do
go.
long term.
If you do long-term, yes, absolutely. If you do long-term debt, it's essentially free. So you can cut it down, still maintaining your leverage, okay? But, maybe 80% in round 5, 70% in round 6, 30% in round 8, but you
So-
still want to borrow.
So when and why would we retire debt and stuff? Because I found in my last round that I got to the end, had so much cash.
So you've
I
got
was
so
retiring
much
debt.
cash you don't know what to do. Well, go back and really start to see when that cash started to accumulate. Because those are actually tools to be able to help you. To be able to rid yourself of cash, reduce your days of working capital, and increase your stock price. So when you're getting to around that 10 million mark in cash, that's a good indication that your company is healthy, especially when you've experienced that for a couple of rounds. That's a good time to say, small dividend, I can pay off a small, or retire a small amount of long-term debt. I can buy back some stock. That's not to say you have to pay off huge amounts. You want to do it in smaller amounts earlier, so that by round 8 you're not giving a $15, $16 dividend. Okay, smaller amounts earlier. And what that helps you do, especially with the long-term debt or the buying back stock, is it keeps your leverage in check.
So which would you recommend then, hey, to reduce our cash, to give a dividend or to retire?
Start
long-term?
out with a dividend. And if the dividend isn't really making a dent, then go to both of them, all 3 of them. And again, not large amounts. You can do smaller amounts earlier in those rounds.
because if you forecasted wrong, then you just lost cash that you could have
That's
whatever,
correct.
you know.
Yeah, so when I say smaller amounts, it may be 2 million, 3 million. Smaller amount, you don't have to do large, see what the impact is.
Does it make sense to borrow 2 million long-term debt and then retire 2
No.
million at the same time?
Now, only borrow if you're going to use it for that year. Only, if you're not gonna invest anything in your company, don't borrow anything. You only borrow money to use it.
Regarding Big
Oh, wait,
Al.
sorry, Matt, were you done?
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Regarding Big Al, you mentioned something, or I think you mentioned, you said don't have more than like 200 and like ending inventory or something like that?
Again, it's based on the number, the inventory you want. You know, I usually do about 60 days for, low